האורחת הבאה שלנו עשתה דרך ארוכה מהעיר מלמו בשוודיה, לחירייה, ואני אציג אותה ברשותכם באנגלית. I would like to welcome our dear friend, my personal friend, Miss Gunilla Carlsson. Gunilla is Director of Communication, Public Affairs of the waste company of Scania, am I saying it right? Scania region in southern Sweden. Gunilla has served on the board of the Swedish Waste Management Organization since 2013 and was a member of the Scientific and Technical Committee of ISWA, the World Organization for Solid Waste Management, where she is currently a board member. Gunilla also coordinates the media activity in the international task force that deals with the marine waste problem and leads the forum of member cities in the Circular and Low Carbon Cities project. Gunilla will talk today about the Swedish waste management in the light of the European legislation and waste mitigation. Gunilla, please.
It's such an honor to be here to give this speech today to you in this lovely country of Israel. Actually, I'm coming from Sweden, as Riva said, and we have had rain for the last 3 months. So I'm so happy to see the sun, actually. So nice. Dear hosts, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to give you this speech today. Some of you might remember 2 years ago I gave a speech about Swedish waste management. It was digital during the pandemic. And it's nice to be here live this time. And actually I will smile to you because that was something I heard when I was giving this digital speech. It was very good, though you didn't smile. So I will do that this time. 2 years, it doesn't sound like it's a very long time, but it is a long time when it comes to legislation and what is happening. 2 years ago, we barely talked about carbon dioxide in Sweden. Now, we only talk about carbon dioxide to air due to the climate change. We talked about facilities, sorting facilities before as well, and that was for quality recycling of material. Today, we talk about sorting facilities to take the plastics out, because we can't have the plastics in the waste to energy plants. So much has happened, actually. Swedish legislation has always been the driver for the Swedish model of waste management. There have been a slight change since 2010 when the Waste Framework Directive came into force. And actually, European Union is driving the legislation today. I will start off today talking a little bit on the global level. Because of the triple planetary crisis that we face. And as you know, we have the climate change, we also have the air pollution problem, and we have biodiversity loss. And those three actions goes together. Each and every one of them have their own effects and causes, and every one of them needs to be solved for us to have a viable future on the globe. Waste management is a local problem, but it must be solved globally today because it affects the globe and the climate change. The climate change is actually one of the most pressuring issues that you have today. And that is because of the droughts, the water scarcity, wildfires, rising sea levels. And we can see that what happens today was the greenhouse gases emitted to the atmosphere 30 years ago. So imagine what we are actually emitting today will cause for effects 30 years ahead of now. So climate change is a really pressing issue that we need to solve. Very much is carried out and done already. In 2015, we have the Paris Agreement. And the Paris Agreement was about the climate change to keep the greenhouse gases and the global warming under 2 degrees, preferable 1.5 degrees. So much is carried out on the global level. United Nations is working, the European Union has set so many legislations in action the last 7 years, and companies all over the world is actually turning because they don't want to emit any carbon dioxide anymore. So very much is happening. As this is not enough, we have a post-pandemic period. And not almost exactly 1 year ago, we also had Russia invading Ukraine, not only causing human disaster, but also tremendously lots of building and construction waste, because this must be dealt with. And no, it will cost billions and billions of euros to rebuild the country, and there is absolutely no thought about environment or climate change in a war. The big problem is it's caused an energy crisis in European Union and in Sweden. We have rising inflation, we have interests going up. So we have a lot of things to deal with, but the climate change is the most pressing issue and we need to tackle it. Waste management can be part of the solution of climate change. I will start off to give you a view of what has happened in the European Union since 2015, when the Paris Agreement came into force. And actually in 2015, the first launch of the Circular Economy Action Plan was set in place. And circular economy is something that really goes hand in hand with waste management, because we need to have the products continuously circulating to be reused as long as possible before it enters the waste management chain. So it's really, really important, but the circular economy is going to stimulate the transition to the circular economy. It's going to boost the global competitiveness, foster the sustainable economic growth, and generate new jobs in the green sector. It's very concrete, ambitious targets, and it's actually covering the whole life cycle of the products, from production to consumption to the waste management. In 2019, this first Circular Economy Action Plan was finished with 54 very good actions set in place. In that year, European Union launched the Green Deal. The Green Deal is a part of the Circular Economy Action Plan, and at the launch, Ursula von der Leyen said, a roadmap for making European Union's economy sustainable by turning climate and environmental challenges into opportunities across all policy areas, and making the transition inclusive and justice for all. And there was one ultimate goal in this plan, and that was to make the Union climate neutral by 2050. A couple of months later, I did realize that this will not be enough. We need to sharpen the goal. They set in action a Fit for 55 action plan, and this plan said that in 2030 we should reduce the greenhouse gas to air with 55%. That is 7 years from now. But as I said, in 2 years it's happened a lot, so 7 years can be enough. But let's see. The Fit for 55 is to make the Union's climate and energy, the transportation, the taxation and policies fit for reducing the net greenhouse gases as much as 55%. They are looking at very many different legislations. They are looking at energy efficiency to lower the amount of energy, how to put renewable energy in action, the taxation. A couple of weeks ago, there was actually a new standard. There was a prohibition for the cars and vehicles. From 2035, it will not be allowed to sell any cars or vehicles that is run by fossil fuels anymore. They will not be able to set them on the market. So very bold decision is made. There is also a carbon border adjustment mechanism set in place in the Fit for 55 package, and that means that you are not able to transport products into the Union if you are not paying tax for the carbon that you emit to the air. Then they have looked at the land use and forestries, the effort sharing regulation, and also the trading system. And I will come back to that because the waste to energy in Sweden, Denmark, and Lithuania are part of the European trading system. The landfills is in the ESR sector, and this is quite tricky for us, actually. But the Green Deal is a holistic and cross-sectoral approach, and it covers all the relevant policies. And the ultimate goal is to decouple the economic growth from the resource use. And this is actually the plan for circular economy. The same year in 2020, there were new plans coming as a part of the Green Deal, and it was the second circular economy action plan. And in this plan, the focus is to reduce the pressure on the natural resources and create sustainable growth and jobs. Focus in this plan is upcycle, and that is really good. It's about how the products are designed. It should promote the processes to produce circular products. It should also encourage sustainable consumption and ensure that waste is prevented. So now we are talking about upcycling, prevention, and to avoid waste. So the focus in the European Union has changed the last 5 years to be much more about upcycle and also the biodiversity and air pollution, because the latest initiatives is talking about pollution to air and water, and also to cut down deforestation worldwide. There are new standards for the pollutions from vehicles, and there are also a carbon removal certification framework set in place. It is voluntary, but it's there. They will include the aviator sector, and they have also sharpened the goal in the Fit for 55 to be in the trading system to be 62%, not 55. So they are actually sharpen the legislation all the time. The latest initiative that came was the industrial plan. So they have talked very much about the households, the targets, but now they are also focusing on industries and the tech, because we need green tech in the future. One also very important thing is that they are focused on methane emissions, not only carbon dioxide. It's time to act. European Union is very well in the forefront. They are setting the agenda for the transformation from take, make, dispose to the true circular economy. And that should be a future that is green and viable for all people. There are very many actions that goes back to the triple planetary crisis and to the waste management. And all the actions in the European Union goes in the same direction today. Circular and clean world, economic sustainable and sound growth, increased circularity, energy efficiency, renewable sources, hindering the greenhouse gases, and a strong decrease of pollution to air and water, and that includes the microplastics to the seas and oceans. I am actually thinking of, are we in a paradigm shift today for the future in the waste management sector? I believe we are. Now, let's move to the Swedish modern waste legislation and how we work with it in the light of what European Union has launched. We like to say in my company that we see opportunities that others see garbage. We are talking about a sustainable resource and waste management because it goes hand in hand. To be able to understand how the Swedish waste management system has developed the last 50 years, we need to take a little historical back trip. And before the 70s, we had dumps. We dumped all the waste. We had in my area in the south of Sweden as much as 100 small dumps at the 70s. But we had also a very strict regulation about environment, how to treat and manage the landfills. We also had a very clear responsibility to put all the household waste collection and treatment on the municipalities. And that was clear. And the municipalities said, oh, we are very small entities, we need to increase. So they formed larger entities working together. So in the 70s, they decreased the amount of dumps from 100 to 2 engineered landfills in my area. So that was the development in the 70s, and that actually Swedish management lies, and at the base is the legislation and the clear responsibilities. In the 80s, we have incineration plants in Sweden, waste to energy, because we need the heat. You don't need the heat as much as we do, but I can say it's very cold when it's under 0 degrees. You need to have more than one coat, and you need to have a hat as well. In the 80s, there were a focus on waste to energy and the emissions especially. We were connected to the district heating nets in the 70s, so we produced the heat in the waste to energy plants, and we deliver it to the city. So we heat the flats with the heat from incineration plants. But the emissions, very important, and it was a huge discussion about dioxins. Very terrible for humans with dioxins. So we decreased with new cleaning systems in the waste to energy plants. So we only have 1 gram of dioxin left to the air from 30 waste to incineration plants in Sweden today. And I have heard a comparison. So if you have an open burning and put a tire on it, it will emit more dioxins than all the waste to incineration plants in Sweden in total. I'm not sure if it's true, but it's a comparison. In the 90s, there were a focus on sorting at the source. And that is the next thing that is a part of the Swedish model in Sweden. Because sorting at the source is very important to have the clean fractions. And we who work in the waste management business, we know that if you have a clean packaging coming in, you can recycle it and you will have a clean material coming out. And then you can use it again. There are research in Europe pointing out that we have plastics from recycled plastics on the market containing hazardous substances that shouldn't be there. So it is very important to have those clean cycles. And in the 90s, we had a lot of focus on the sorting at the source. It was voluntary, but we have as many as 70 municipalities of 300 that has 8 fractions at every curbside. I will show you more about that. In the beginning of the 2000th century, it was much a talk about recovery and landfilling again. And we had 2 landfill bans, one on organic waste and one on burnable waste. And that meant very much for the recycling rate, because then we could recover both the energy and the materials. We were not allowed to put it on the landfills. We have landfills tax as well. So you can see that the landfilling part has decreased to only 2% of the total amount of waste from industries and households. Then we came to the 2010s. The European Union put their Circular Economy Act in action, and we could see a focus on sustainable consumption. And in the 20s, we can see that the focus is emissions, emissions, emissions. And we can see that it really affects the Swedish waste management. This one you have seen, but as a triangle. And I was very happy when the professor talked about that. Actually, it says that you should use all 5 methods. Prevention is the most important one. Reuse as much you can, as long as you can. But you should use all 5 different methods to treat the waste, because we don't want to have the waste in the waste management sector. We want people to use the material as long as possible. Circular economy. It means that you need to put products on the market that actually is possible to use and also recyclable when it comes to the sector. And we believe very strong that waste management goes hand in hand with the circular economy. Because if you work in the waste management sector, you know there will be products, when you have recycled them for 5, 6, 7 times, the fibers are too short. You cannot recycle them anymore. You need to take care of them in the waste management sector. And then you need both waste to energy plants or waste incineration plants, and you need the landfills. But on the landfills, you do not want to put anything organic because it creates methane gases. And that is due to the climate change. So we are working together with this one. A little bit more about the Swedish model, actually. I said that we have the clear responsibilities and clear targets. I'm just going to change my slides here so I'm on the right paper when I'm talking. We have a national responsibility. We have national plans set in place with targets. The municipalities are responsible for collection and treatment. They also set targets. And everything comes from the European Union. The business industry, they are responsible for their own waste and make sure that it's taken care of a good private or municipal company. We have an EPR system as well. So we have the extended producer responsibility. And for glass and for packaging, this is really important because we can recycle much. Plants. If you're going to treat waste, you need plants. You cannot do it by hand because it's so huge amount of waste coming up. Today in Sweden, you can find 38 biological treatment plants for the food waste. And when we talk about food waste, we don't talk about biogas first. We talk about biofertilizer. Because if you take the food and think of it circular, you will have the food back on the farmer's land. This means you need to have very high quality on the food waste. You cannot have a lot of pollutants in it, and not a lot of plastics, because the farmers will refuse to take it back on the farmer's land. So it's really important to have those clean cycles all the time. We have today 35 waste-to-energy plants, and we have 48 landfills. And if you look at the fee structure, it's the same. It's like administration, collection, treatment, and taxes. Average fee is 200 to 400 euros a year per household, depending on if you're living in a flat or if you're living in a villa. So if you have the curbside collection, it's a little bit more expensive if you have it in the flat together with others. But it's the same system for many. Collection system. I said it was clear responsibilities. National targets and plans, municipalities can choose the collection system on their own. So the nation and the state cannot decide on how to collect, but they can say what to collect. We have today different systems. We have one bin in some municipalities, but then you have recycling stations. So you should take all the packaging, go to the stations. We have 2 bins at curbside with 8 fractions. In my household, I have 11 fractions together with garden waste, small electronics, and also extra for plastics. So 11 fractions at my curbside out by the villa. It's a lot to treat and to sort, but it's very good and efficient. From 2024, we will have a new legislation that comes from the state. And that means that the municipalities will be responsible for the collection of all packaging, and it should be curbside. But they haven't said how it should be managed, just that it should be curbside, so everybody can sort the waste at the source home. So this will be a very game changer in Sweden as well. And European Union also have a revision of the Waste Framework Directive going on right now, and they will come up with a new labeling system for products. They will also come up with sorting at the source to make it obligatory in European Union. So that will be a game changer as well. Targets. We need to have targets for the waste management. And actually, it's set very much in the Union today. So to 2035, we should have 65% recycling of the household waste. The packaging, if you take all the packaging together, it should be 70%. But you can see that we have different targets for the different fractions. Most of them we are managing very good today. I can say the plastics we are not managing very good. So I will come back to that one. We also have Swedish targets, for instance, for the food waste. 75% should be collected and treated separately, biologically. And we also have a decrease of the household waste, the residues. It should decrease to 100 kilos per person to 2030. And that is a harsh target. That means a decrease of 10 kilos per person every year. It's a lot. And waste minimization, of course, as well. If we sort a lot, the residues will decrease, and that is what we put into the waste to energy plants. The blue line is the residues in the bin. The orange line is the food waste, and that is actually in Swedish, so you can probably not read it. I'm so sorry for that. But you can see that the household waste and the residues are decreasing. And that means we are putting more out from the cycles. If we go back in time, we can see that the state of the market actually affects the waste management and the amounts of waste created in the household, but not the residues. They have been the same all the time. Since last year, since the pandemic, we can see a decrease of people coming to the recycling centers. We can see a decrease of amount of bulky waste coming in, the greenhouse waste. The residues, we have not seen a decrease because of the state of the art, the energy crisis, the inflation, etc. But we do believe that it will affect the waste this time because we do sort, we eat all the food because it's tough times at the moment. Let's go over a little bit Swedish waste management first. Yes, the figures here. In average, 475 kilos per person. And you can see that 72 kilos is food waste. 163 goes to material recycling. 236 kilos goes to energy recovery. And 4 kilos, only the ashes and the sludges from the waste to energy plants goes to landfill. No organics, no burnable waste. Plastics. We need to talk a little bit about the plastics because it's very difficult. There are good plastic and there are bad plastics. One of the main issues with the plastic is that it's so much plastics and it's not recyclable, unfortunately. We need to reduce plastics in the waste, and we need to communicate about it because when you go to the store, you should know what to take and what to not take. What is a good plastic and what is a bad plastic? What is recyclable and what's not? We also need the sorting at the source and differentiated treatment fees, especially for industries, because they need to sort out the plastics. We are also looking at sorting facilities for plastics just to remove it from the burnable waste, because when it puts into waste to incineration plant, you have the carbon dioxide to air. If we capture the carbon, we can actually deliver negative emissions. We can remove more carbon dioxide than we emit to the air, due to that we have both fossil origin and biogenic origin. It's quite complicated action. In my company, we have a textile sorting facility. This one was actually put in place because we have 8 kilos per person of textile that is put in the residues every year. And if we remove the textiles, we can sort it out. We can make fiber recycling a possibility. And we move out plastics, because all things we have on ourselves contains mostly polyester, and that is plastics. And it goes into the waste-to-energy plant and creates carbon dioxide. This plant has a capacity of 4.5 tons per hour. We can sort 16 different fractions. It sounds very much, but if you take cotton, for instance, you have light cotton, red cotton, black cotton, and that is 3 fractions. But it is very good because we can sort the post-consumer goods and then we can send it to recycling. We also have sorting facilities like an MRF, and this is new for Sweden. This is actually the first one, and it was not created for recycling. It was created to take the plastics out of the burnable waste. And we can see today that we have 10,000 tons of plastic sorted out and 2,500 tons of metals. Very small amount of food waste in this one, but it's not usable for biological treatment, so it's sent to the waste to incineration plant. But you can see, this company says we can recycle 30 to 40% of the plastics from the mixed waste. Then it goes to the plastic recycling company. They say they sort 20,000 tons of plastic every year. They say that the recycling rate is 18%. That means, I don't know which one is correct and which one is not, but it means that we have at least 60 to 80% of the plastics not recycled. It goes to waste incineration plant and creates carbon dioxide. And this is a huge problem. So we believe that we need to have a carbon capture storage facility next to the waste to incineration plant in the future. And we are aiming at having it in place 2030. So it's only 7 years from now. There is a lot of problems with carbon capture today. It's enormously expensive. It takes out all the electricity that we produce in the waste to energy plant, not the heat, but the electricity. There will not be enough storage place in the future for all the captured carbon emissions, so we need to utilize the carbon in any other way. And the transportation system. If we are going to transport it out and store it in this, under the seas, it's enormously expensive. So, Swedish model, recycling goes hand in hand with circular economy and waste to incineration and landfill. We need to use all those methods to treat the waste in the future. But we also need strict legislation that is upcycling so we have pure and good recyclable products set on the market. And now I know that my time is running up, so I will just go quickly through a few slides and go to the concluding remarks. Just sorting. So, waste management sector. We can contribute to tackling the climate change. We can contribute to actually setting a circular and true circular economy in place because we know the problems down in the cleaning area of the life cycle of products, and we know actually what is happening there. And I do believe that we need to have legislation and clear responsibilities, also targets. But it is really important to take all the targets and the legislation and adapt it locally. Waste management is local treatment and collection, but it is a global problem because we have products traveling all around the world several times before it ends up locally. So we need to cooperate and work together with others. We also says a lot about not only carbon dioxide, the methane emissions. They are really important as they are so much more aggressive greenhouse gases. Globally, we also talk about stop open burning and open dump sites because they are creating so many problems worldwide. Curbside collection, if it's possible, it is a very good way to have the clean recycling streams. And you need to measure, have data collection to see where are you all the way. And what I have seen from the strategies and understood from the presentations, you are on the right track. So I think it's really, really good. And I do believe that the right to a clean and healthy environment is a basic human right, actually, today. I do believe that we can solve the waste management problems by tackling them locally. No society works like another one. If we work with targets, responsibilities, and tackling in the mindset, I believe that we can make a difference who sits here in the waste management sector. We will all make a difference together. Thank you for the attention.
We might have a minute for one question, or otherwise you can meet there. Okay, Lev.
It's about 50 euros a ton.
Much more expensive than here.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Riva. Thank you.